very welcome to this presentation. I first want to state that I'm presenting work that was done within the IEA DSM agreement. Not only by myself, I was managing this project, but also with experts from Sweden, the Netherlands, South Korea, Italy, France, Denmark, Canada, and Belgium. So it is a common work that I can present today for you. The presentation holds three main components. One is a very brief introduction to an evaluation framework. The main topic will be what we learn during the process as 7 key analytic elements when you are doing an evaluation. And I will present a selection of experiences from the evaluation guidebook, the experience in all the countries I mentioned before where experts were participating in this project. At the end, I will give you some more recent developments dealing with the topic of impact of energy savings calculations. But to start with the evaluation framework. In general, everybody knows that a program or project has inputs, outputs, outcome and results, and at some moment impact. And it happens over time. You start with an input, you get concrete results, output, then you want to see some change somewhere, outcome, results, and then the overall impacts that could be very broad. By the time it's going over, you see also that externalities are of major influence in reaching impacts. It seems that there is some problem with the sound, that is low and not very clear. I hope somebody can handle that. The general framework in our guidebook, we are used the situation that you have a problem or a need in a society, in this case energy savings or other topics related to the environment, and you want to make a public intervention, policy measure, a program, or a project. For that you have objectives related to your policy measure. So your program is then of relevance of the needs or issues in a society. When you start implementing your program, you have the inputs, money, people, products, and outputs. The difference between the two, the concrete outputs and the inputs, is often indicated as efficiency. To what extent has the expected objective been achieved in outputs? But what you really need is outcome, results in a society. So it is not important that you produce a handbook or you produce a movie, but that people start doing something with that. And doing something with that is the effectiveness of your program. And at the end, as most of the programs are intended to result in energy savings or reducing greenhouse gas emissions, you have your impacts that is of importance for the sustainability of the society. So evaluation can deal with the relevance of your program, the efficiency, effectiveness, and the overall utility and sustainability. These are a number of elements, and of course you need to concentrate at some moment. And rather often people are in a situation that they raise the question, what should I address? And how to ensure that the relevant topics are considered. Not that you need all to do to the same level of detail, but at least you should be aware where you concentrate and where you said, it's nice, but not now. During our project, we were learning, and this learning resulted in what we called 7 key elements for the evaluation. Which are those 7 key elements? First of all, the policy measure theory. What is your thinking how the program or project would operate and would impact? The second group of elements are dealing with indicators. Indicators showing the success, because you cannot measure or estimate everything in your program. You have to select indicators. If you later on get the information, you want to compare it. But to compare to what? And that is the problem of baselines. The fourth group of key elements is the assessment of output and outcome. The fifth is dealing with especially energy savings or emission reduction or other relevant impacts like demand reduction. The sixth, that is rather often not incorporated in evaluation, is the calculation of cost efficiency, and cost effectiveness of the program or project. The last element is not something you conduct, but what you should take in consideration when you start doing the work, the level of evaluation efforts. For that, I will present what we think what could be an appropriate level and how you make choices over there. The first key element is a little bit more elaborated. As I stated before, it provides the basic framework for the evaluation. And there are 2 major things you should do there. It is the specification of your policy measure domain. What we mean by that? That you clearly should write down what is the program of project targeted to, which end user market segment you are dealing with. Is it the house owner or the person who is living in the house? If you look to the supply side market, if you want some specific change of energy carrier, then this should say something about your supply side. What is the participation status and where you want to incorporate your program? Is it in a local situation, a regional, a national, or in another area? So this should be clear also with the evaluation. Is this clear in the program? The next element in the theory is what type of hypothesis you have on the qualitative and quantitative effects and the time frame over which you expect that the effects will show up. To make it more clear with a key element example, the statement of a policy measure theory. This is also taken from the evaluation guidebook. So if you want to know more about it, you can go into the evaluation guidebook, find this figure and get more information on it. In general, it shows that you have a partnership agreement to develop a product up to the pilot scale and then goes into the market. And then you have the market penetration increasing by early adopters, product growth, and project maturation. This is already something that was developed many years ago, as you see, 96. But surprisingly enough, rather often, market interventions are not based on a clear statement of policy measurement theory. And evaluators, later on in the evaluation, develop such theory to ensure that they make a proper evaluation. But of course it is preferred that that work should be done before you implement the program and not afterward in the evaluation. But the practice is that rather often the evaluator has to conduct the policy measure theory. Another example of elements is, for example, if you are dealing with building codes, the increased frequency of using code predescription in building methods. What is your thinking about it and how you assume that it will happen? Elements of this for the different type of policy measures we use in the evaluation guidebook are related to regulation, information programs, economic incentives, or cooperation or agreements, voluntary agreements. So these are examples of hypotheses in your theory when you start a program or when you want to evaluate a program, because also in evaluation you have to think about what you want to measure as a result of the program. You have to specify the indicators, key element number 2. Inputs are rather often simple: finance, people, building, and so on. The outputs are normally under the control of management. So later on in the evaluation, as an evaluator, you can say that was under the control of the management, and if something is different from the expectations, the management had to take that into consideration. Outcome or results could be rather initial, like I mentioned before, a guidebook you develop, or a commercial. It also could be long-term if you are in a research project where the outcome is a product after 2 or 3 years. Impacts, the change in energy use or climate, that is normally to be a longer term. So think about also in the evaluation that if you have a short running program, evaluated already after 1 year, impacts in energy savings are rather difficult to find out, because normally people receive information on energy use only once a year or once half a year. So you cannot then have a very good impact situation. And also on the cost indicators, you have to choose. Here, an example of the case that was incorporated in the country report for Denmark. a program targeted by the schools to children to address the standby of electricity in households. So it was evaluated for the produced output, the quality and the number of teaching material, the selection of prize in the competition, and the number of children and classes that were taught. They also had material on the internet, and there the outcome was assessed on the number who bought the material, who read the material, who had a discussion with the family, whether they remember seeing a TV campaign, and so on. Of course, while the product output could be measured rather simple, the assessment of outcome indicators has to be conducted by a research institute. The energy impact was not assessed in this project because the time for the evaluation was set within 1 year after the start of the program. Going to case element 3, the development of baselines. In general, it is how would the market actors who have participated in or who were exposed to the program have done in the absence of the program. Because if already something is happening, you cannot count in the evaluation that that is by your program that the change was that. I don't go into the details of baselines. In general, there are two types of baseline. Static, you assume something and you assume it for the whole time period of your program, or a dynamic one where you assume changings over time. There is a very good reading at least 4 different publications at the IPAC side dealing with baseline types and where to use that in the best situation. So I refer to that side if you want more information. Here you see some examples of the development of baseline. If you're dealing with the building code enforcement, the building code provision covered the targeting building components and end use. What is your assumption about that? If you're doing energy audits, what is the assumption that non-participants should already adopt the measures so that you can adjust later on for that in the participants? What is the market share, if you look to economic incentive program, for equipment that are in areas not exposed to, for example, rebate programs? So what is then in practice the development of that qualified equipment without your economic incentive? And that gives you information how to correct your expected impact outcome of your own program. Assessment of output and outcome. Also here, a selection of output indicators that are speaking for itself, and are a large number of output indicators. This is just a selection of the indicators that were used in case applications in the participating countries. It shows that you can take absolute number or percentages. The absolute number are rather often used if you want to be sure that you reach a certain number of people. And so you evaluate that. If you want to say, I want to reach some share, and whether it is 100 or 1,000, is related to the total number, then a percentage, of course, is much better. So you should keep that in mind when you select outcome and output. What was in the theory, key element 1, the idea how it would be functioned, and later on the selection of the group you want to target with your program. And the evaluator has to take that into consideration. What was the idea the program manager had? Here another example that is also included in the country report from Denmark. A free of charge audit dealing with electricity in industries, where the evaluation was concentrated on what types of advice were implemented and what is the lifetime of the measures of the implemented advice. So they looked to the output, to the number of audits, the draft audit reports, and the number of audits offered to the market. The outcome is the number of audits, the implemented advice, the lifetime, and customer satisfaction. Assessment of impact. That is where you want to see the change in the environment, the local environment, the buildings, the community, or whatever the target group was. Rather often the benefits are split up into energy, the net program energy savings, and gross program energy savings. Gross is the overall, net is correction dealing with baseline topics and problems in your measurement. Especially in the US, there is a large literature on the difference between gross and net, especially if you want to ensure that a program developer gets rewarded for the real impact of the program. Environmental benefits mostly dealing with emission reduction, and if there is an emission trading scheme, the unit value of emissions reduction. The non-energy use could be related to water or non-fuel resources and increased productivity, savings, and so on. In general, you have a number of saving methods to it. Engineering, so it's a calculation. Engineering with simulation. Calculations with also monitoring. So then you don't not only calculate, but also measure in the market. Doing bill analysis, that is especially rather often used in economic incentives. When they are doing rebates, they are asked later on for the bill of the electricity or heating to see whether they find differences. And the most costly is end-use metering. That is not that often used due to the cost related to it. Here you see a program of industrial energy audits conducted in Korea, where they concentrate also on the cost element. For the different technology, they give a subsidy. They follow the savings in electricity, the savings in money, how much the investment was, and how long it took based on the savings and the investment to get the money back, the recovery period. And you see that it really differs over time. So we now passed from the 7 elements to 5, most important one, and we're now moving to cost and evaluation effort level. cost, what we discovered is that you could separate them in 3 different groups. One is related to administration. What are the personnel and overhead costs? Administration if you are outsourcing a program. Or incremental costs, the cost of the measures themselves, and other measure-specific items such as costs to properly dispose or use fluorescent scent ballasts and lamps, or downtime for installation. The level of evaluation effort. As I start seeing in the beginning, you have to concentrate in the evaluation. But how to concentrate? We suggest that at the beginning of an evaluation, you make up your own mind. What is where you want to go for, and what is what somebody wants to pay for. Level C, the program review evaluation, focus on input and output indicator, and normally only use existing, rather often already written, information sources. You can do it very fast and with low cost. But it doesn't say you anything of the impact or effects of your program. If you move in that direction, you go to what we call a level B, targeted evaluation. Then you also include outcome indicators at gross behavioral change, and you have some additional information sources. But you don't go into more detail from gross to net changes. Level A is a comprehensive evaluation, the most costly one. Then you go also and try using your baseline with research to really address the impact and effect that the program as such had in the environment. You're dealing also with indicators on energy savings, and you have additional internal and external information sources. So rather often, a specialized organization is hired to do additional research, like a survey. We went over all the case applications, and here I present you just a few ones where we said, okay, what is the level of evaluation effort for that program where we describe the evaluation? And you see that only a few reach a level A, the majority is in B and C, but at least it gives you some indication on where you should be thinking on what level of effort you want to do. Now more or less ending the evaluation guidebook. I want to go in a few slides more into a detailed recent development for key element 5, harmonization of energy savings calculations. Because recent year there are more harmonization globally, and there is a starting of a standardization process of energy saving calculations. Both should make the conducting of energy saving calculations more efficient and more easy to compare. What is going on? In the USA, during the last 4 years, they implemented all over in the US the Uniform Methods Project, where they selected for a specific area a consultant that drafted an energy savings calculations that was discussed, judged, and published. So if you browse the web, go to Uniform Methods Project, you will find all that information. that was within the US trying to make a method to do energy saving calculation more uniform, more comparable. Additional in the Northeast and the Southeast, there were regional initiatives where regulators were sitting together and trying to find common understanding and agreement on energy savings calculations, so that also their specific actions were more comparable. In Europe, a few years ago, the European Commission published the Energy Efficiency Directive and obliged the member states in the European Union, that are 28 states, to produce national energy efficiency action plan, and in those plans to provide the information on how they conduct the energy saving calculations to later on evaluate and report on this to the year 2020. And also after the evaluation guidebook, the IEA started project Task 21 on harmonization of energy savings. And so that is also one of the future sources you could use if you want to know something what is going on energy savings. International standardization in Europe, the European Standardization Organization, and the Global Standardization Organization is working on standards. But those standards don't expect that they give you detailed information. They are general standards and holding more general guidance, but at least holds the main elements of the calculations you conduct. The European standard that is already published a year ago, and with that, more or less, the European organization stopped the work because the ISO, the Global Standardization Organization, is continue working in different areas to provide general standards, including one on energy savings calculations. That energy savings calculations are then dealing for actions and projects. ISO doesn't publish information on ongoing work until it is finalized, so it's rather hard to find information on that. But if you contact the National Standardization Organization, they could help you by finding more information if you are interested in that. In Task 21, we also looked into key elements, other key elements than the 7 I presented before for energy saving calculations, and how they were used. And also in that project, the baseline showed as the most critical common element the savings calculating from a unit is not very often used. And the saving lifetime, how long is really saving showing up, and can you account for that, is not a major topic and is often treated when people are using it in a very different way. I want to come to a conclusion and make the reference to the evaluation guidebook that is available on the website of the IEA DSM agreement. The evaluation guidebook has a volume 1 describing the 7 key analytic elements I presented today, the 5 types of policy measures where we present examples and more than I selected for the presentation today, and conclusions. Volume 2 holds the country reports with case examples where we presented the information using the 7 key elements for several projects and programs in the countries that are listed here. So there you can find that type of information that is really from the practice applied to the 7 key elements. Again, thank you for attending. And at the end, here you see again the 7 key analytic elements I used during this presentation, and I advise you to use these if you are conducting or preparing an evaluation. Again, thank you, and looking forward to questions.